Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Malu Dimim in Israel. The word Jew brings up all kinds of connotations and feelings in people. For some, it brings out the worst. They hear the word, and it just strikes a raw nerve. It's about money and power and controlling things, and just being too darn smart. For others, it's nothing but pride and facing down all odds and having the staying power to outlive every enemy. While these sorts tend to be Jewish, there are plenty of non-Jews who are the biggest Jew lovers out there. Then there is everybody in between. They either have some version of a mixed opinion or they couldn't care less. Jews in general tend to be proud of being Jewish. This may be a trait that is going the way of the typewriter, but it is pretty strong in most Jews. But there are also no shortage of so-called self-hating Jews. These types have major trouble finding anything good about being Jewish, and can find every kind of problem with disturbing ease. A good number of Jews are probably somewhere in the middle. They have their share of proud moments, but they also have their share of embarrassments where the last thing they want is to admit to being part of this tribe. It's a strange thing being a Jew who isn't quite sure what exactly is so great about being a Jew. You definitely want to belong, but you really aren't sure why. Jews getting into hot water with their surrounding cultures is a phenomenon that is almost as old as the Bible. In fact, it is actually a bit older than the official setup of the Bible as we know it today. It doesn't date back as far as Jewish or Israelite origins. That would take us back over 3,000 years, and any problems were not of the anti-Semitic nature, but of political battles between rival ancient Middle Eastern nations. They were not even Jews back then. They were Israelites, and before that, Hebrews. The Jews, as a slightly distinct people, only emerged as a result of most of the other Israelite tribes getting exiled from their homeland about 2,700 years ago. The only Israelites left in ancient Israel were those from the tribe of Judea, and a small population of the priestly caste, and whatever survivors from the first exile who managed to stay put by merging with the Judeans. But the Judeans themselves went into exile about 2,600 years ago and should have vanished into the woodwork of the ancient Middle East. That they didn't is one of the major mysteries of human history. They somehow stuck around, first in ancient Babylonia, then in ancient Persia, then back in ancient Israel and all around the Mediterranean, and then in another exile all over the known world. The Jewish diaspora is one of the strangest things in the history of the world. What made this group, out of all possible groups and tribes and whatever else, want to survive as a unique people? What enabled them to pull off this unprecedented feat against all odds? Was it God? Was it fate? Was it luck? Was it sheer willpower? We don't know. But we do know that the Jews are still around. From the time of that second Jewish exile around 1900 years ago, the Jews have been semi-permanent guests wherever they have gone. This has been their situation from China to the southern reaches of Africa, from the north of Europe to the tip of South America. They survived almost 2,000 years in parts of North Africa and the Middle East, but also in several areas of southern Europe. They outlasted the greatest empires the world has ever seen. The ancient Babylonians, the various Persian kingdoms, the Greeks, the Romans from their beginning until their fall, several Muslim dynasties, everything the Europeans could put together since the Romans, and the modern empires of the British, the French, the Americans, the Russians, and the Nazis. This longevity under the harshest of conditions is harder to explain than the origins of the universe. We can trace it all back to the Big Bang, but we cannot fathom what it is that makes a people survive at any cost. This week's Parsha is called Tetzave. It deals mostly with the garments that the high priest or Kohen HaGadol would wear when officiating in the tabernacle. But we're not going to talk about any of that in this podcast. The reason for that is that something else is coming up in the Jewish calendar that is universally assumed to be a much bigger deal than the Parsha. It is the holiday of Purim. This holiday, which always comes sometime around March, is without a doubt the most joyous one of the Jewish calendar, and that's saying quite a bit. It's pure celebration from beginning to end. There is even partially sanctioned but widely practiced drunkenness that not everyone approves of, but pretty much everyone tolerates to one degree or another. Purim is the classic example of the old Jewish parody on what goes on at every Jewish celebratory meal. They tried to kill us, but we beat them. Let's eat. Except with Purim, it might be, let's drink. The entire story is told in what was probably the last book accepted into the canon of the Jewish Bible, the Book of Esther. This book, which is 10 chapters long, is known in Hebrew as Megillat Ester, the Scroll of Esther. It is read from a scroll in the two public readings, one on Purim evening and the other in the morning. It takes about a half hour to an hour, depending on the group listening. Sometimes it can get a bit rowdy or noisy, as Jews tend to get very worked up over one particular word that comes up many times in the reading. This word is Haman, the bad guy of the story. Every time his name is read, there is an unofficial practice to try to drown it out in whatever means comes in handy, from banging on the table to weird noisemakers called groggers to screaming if appropriate. The story deals with the time when many of the Jews lived in what is now Iran and then was Paras or Persia. This was about 2,400 years ago, so it is pretty far back there. The Jews lived in all of the provinces of the Persian Empire, and their presence was an accepted feature of life. The story begins with a royal feast at which the queen, whose name was Vashti, was asked to appear in public in a manner she deemed unacceptable. For this, the king, Ahasuerus, had her killed. As fate would have it, for a replacement, he selected a Jewish woman named Esther, whose uncle Mordecai had raised her. He told her not to reveal her ancestry, having something in mind that becomes a central part of the story. In the course of things, the king raises this guy, Haman, to the position of viceroy of the emperor. With all this power, he decides that he has to do away with the Jews, since they are different from everyone and refuse to follow the customs of the kingdom. He manages to convince the king to support his plan, and things are set in motion by some sort of lottery, which determines the final date when the Jews will be slaughtered. The Persian word for lottery is pur, and since there were a few of these, the plural is Purim, hence the name of the holiday. But things don't go as Haman planned, since Mordecai gets on the king's good list for revealing a plot to assassinate him. As a reward, the king orders Haman to lead him around the city on a horse, calling out that this is what is done to those whom the king favors. Haman is totally humiliated by all this and plots his revenge on Mordecai, whom he loathes like no other. But Esther is informed of what is happening and plays her part in Mordecai's scheme. She invites the king and Haman to a couple of private feasts she has set up. During the second one, she tells the king that her own people are in danger of being annihilated by someone powerful who wants them dead. The king, horrified by this news, asks who is behind all this. Esther then points towards Haman and says that it's him. The king then storms out of the room. While he is outside, Haman falls on the bed Esther is sitting on to plead for his life. It happens that right at that moment, the king returns. He sees Haman on the same bed as his queen and accuses him of trying to seduce her. This, of course, spells Haman's doom and leads to a great victory of the Jews over their enemies. They are allowed to defend themselves against the decree, which itself couldn't be rescinded, and end up slaughtering the very people who wanted to kill them. Haman and his 10 sons are publicly hung while all this is going on. In the end, Mordecai is raised to a high position in the government and is hailed as a hero to his people. That's what the celebration is all about. The amazing thing is that this whole chain of events was set off by the smallest of insults. It seems that following Haman's rise to power, all the servants of the king would bow down to him upon orders from the king. The only one who refused was Mordecai. The other servants asked Mordecai why he did this, and no answer is given. This went on for some time until Haman caught wind of it and found out that Mordecai was a Jew and that he refused to submit to this kowtowing. This incensed Haman so much that he decided he wouldn't simply kill Mordecai, which would have been easy, but to kill all of Mordecai's people. It was almost like the wheels of fate were spinning so firmly that nothing could alter them, but something did. Why did Mordecai refuse to bow down to this megalomaniac? Why did Haman react in this completely unhinged manner? It was a kind of fate that set things in motion. This was the way things had to go, even though God or any divine power is never mentioned anywhere in the story. It just had to be. But why did Mordechai refuse to submit to this fate? Perhaps it is because this trait lies at the very core of what it means to be a Jew. This book mentions the word HaYehudim, the Jews, significantly more than any other book in the Bible. To a great degree, this is where the word came from. The Jews are defined in this story by the actions of Mordechai and Esther. The single defining feature we see is an unwillingness to submit to fate. The lots were drawn, the date was set, but the Jews refused to give in to their fate. Mordechai set things in motion with his refusal to bow down to Haman. He had to do this because this was his signature move. He refused to submit. Esther played her role, working behind the scenes until the right moment to reveal who she was. When that happened, even the king who had signed on to this whole scheme had to back down and allow the Jews to decide their own fate. So it was, and so it came to be. Fate is a powerful voice in our lives, but it doesn't mean that we always must submit to it. If there is any defining feature of what it means to be a Jew, it is this: the willingness to challenge the mysterious force of fate. All of Jewish history is nothing but that challenge. It is still going on now with the creation of Israel following the Holocaust. It is a strange fate to be the people who refuse to bow down to fate, but perhaps that is what it takes to survive through the fateful millennia, as the Jews have done. Shabbat Shalom and Happy Purim.